Hey, we're on the live stream already, guys, just so you know.
What?
So no one tell their deepest secrets anymore.
Okay. Hey, real quick, for Proposition 4 class caseload sizes, that's also Dana? I thought that was going to be Nicole.
No, that's Nicole. Are you sure you're
Okay.
on the right agenda?
Or, yeah.
And it says Dana?
Uh-huh.
Let me double check that.
Okay.
That's weird.
Mr. Anthony, how are you?
I guess I wasn't muted. I was making a whole bunch of noise. I'm sorry. I'm doing good, everybody. Welcome. How are you?
Good, good, good. Is that a mustache that is coming in, or?
No, no. I hate shaving. You know, here at YouTube, so now you know also. But I hate shaving, but I hate being hairy even more.
Oh, I should probably send out the link to everyone.
And just an update. I just received a quick text message. Dr. Diaz is logging in here shortly, so we should see him soon.
Hey, Marty, I went ahead and made that change.
Thank you. Yeah, I see that I definitely typed the wrong name. Sorry about that.
No, no problem, please. Dirk, A+ with the hat again.
Yeah, even though I got the cowboy blue on, I thought I'd go with ASU for you there, Chico.
All right, all right. Well, they say what's up here, not what's right here, right? So there you go.
I forgot to admit Shellman. Sorry, Shellman.
Hello. Resisting the urge to say, hey, all you cool cats and kittens? And looking to see who laughs. Okay, now I know who did.
I mean, I would have laughed like a month ago.
That's never going to get old.
Never, never. Mr. Barbuto, just let me know when we're ready to get the show started.
Well, whenever you take that hat off, I'm ready to go. So.
Look, this is in homage that we are almost on vacation. It's time to start dressing the part. I'm ready to go on break. I know all of you guys are all ready to go on break. So let's get this done.
Well, yeah, Chico, then we're ready. If you're not going to take it off, then we're ready.
All right. Well, the time is 3:02 on May 14th. Meet and Confer is officially starting. We are going to start out with introductions. And I will start out. Chico Robinson, Kenilworth Middle School.
Jay Barbuto, Edison.
Nicole Goodwin. Nicole Goodwin, first grade at Whittier School and Pecto Treasurer.
Julie Robbins, social worker at Garfield.
Our neighbors, third grade at Lowell.
Dana Ramos, IEIS at Emerson.
Zephy Magana, principal at Hurd Elementary.
I get to be Kenilworth, Anthony Petrangeli.
Shelman Brown, Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Dirk Olmsted, principal at Capitol School.
Vic Diaz, Director of Human Resources.
All right. Before we look over the agenda, a quick shout out to Marnie Burris, who is starting her master's in education and instructional leadership with an emphasis in administration. That's right, she's going to be taking your guys' job real soon at NAU. Another wonderful PECTA member and educator doing what they can to improve their career and improve what they do in the classroom. So round of applause for Marnie. She hates me right now, I apologize. All right.
Jump on in, the water's fine, but we can't wear that hat because we're not going to break it.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. All right, here is today's agenda. We're going to start with Proposition 1, salary increase, who will be covered by Dana. Proposition 2, budget allocation, also covered by Dana. Proposition 11, Prop 301, will be Julie. Proposition 9, professional agreement, and Proposition 10, sole bargaining agent, will be done by me. And Proposition 4, class caseload, will be done by Nicole. All right, so we're going to go ahead and since we have a full plate, I know I'm moving this a little fast today. Let's start with Dana, Proposition 1, salary increase.
Okay, so hi everyone. We'll start with PECTA's response to district's counter proposal for a 2% raise for all certified staff. And I'd like to share that PECTA is accepting a 2% raise for all certified staff. There is language that we want to include that is like a contingency language that we wanted to counter back with. We understand that we just don't know what kind of situation the district may be in, and we know that we've been losing students, and PECTA obviously wants to be cognizant of that. But we thought it was important, thank you, Jay. We thought it was important to include language about what happens if, in fact, we don't lose as many students as we think we might. So here's the contingency language. It's here. It says, if the district has a decrease of student enrollment less than 350 students or receives additional funds that can be allocated to the maintenance and operation budget, the district admin team and PECTA will schedule a special meet and confer session to discuss the immediate distribution of those funds to certified staff members of Phoenix number 1 for the 2021 school year. So that is our counter proposal to your proposal. And I guess at this point, I'd like to open it up for a response or any questions that you might have.
Dana, it's Shelman with a clarifying question with the language. Am I understanding correctly that literally any additional funds that come into the district would 100% all just be divided up amongst the teaching staff or certified staff, regardless of any other things that popped up that required us to need to spend unforeseen costs?
No, I didn't read it that way, or we didn't. I don't think we crafted it that way. If there's something in there that's troubling, of course, you'll let me know. But we thought that there was flexibility because it says that we'll come back to a special session, in which case we would discuss how that money might be used and spent, and not necessarily, not with the understanding that not all of it may be spent simply as a payout, but that we would come back and essentially collaborate or negotiate how that money is used.
So the intent is more that we're revisiting the conversation should additional funds be made available, is what the intent behind it is?
Yes, if there's more money than what you thought there was going to be, we'd come back for a special session and we go through this very fun process again.
I think it was that we'll meet to discuss the immediate disbursement piece that threw me off a little bit. So I just wanted to make sure that we were thinking the same things, because sometimes our intent is not always exactly how each other reads what's written. So thank you for that clarification.
Of course. And I mean, I guess I would say that if there's language that we can use that makes that more clear, then we might want to work on that.
Well, administration could take a closer look at that language. Before that, though, I do just want to say thank you. I know that the news that we delivered last week was probably not the news that most people wanted to hear. And just having the courage to say again that we're all in this together, we really appreciate. In terms of that language, yeah, we can wordsmith that. I think the word that's immediate is the one that jumped out to me first. We may not want to shackle ourselves that way, as we're going to be sure to discuss over the coming months. There's going to be all kinds of other things to talk about, and we do at some point need to talk about TIF and the disappearance of TIF, and the end of that grant. And so we don't want to be shackled in saying we have to immediately distribute something that maybe we found a better use for when it comes to something related to TIF or something like that. So it might just be as simple as dropping that language.
Okay, I think that maybe the reason why we chose the word immediate is because we want to avoid saying, okay, 2% now, and then the district comes into more money than what they thought, and then that gets used for something else, without us kind of having an understanding of what could potentially be used for additional monies for certified staff. So I think that maybe is why we used the immediate language, but I think that as long as the spirit of what we're wanting is still there, the wording might be able to be changed, just like I said, as long as the intent for what we wanted is the same. Okay, so then.
Dana, can I ask something really quick?
Of course.
Dr. Diaz, we talked a couple times about this, that number 350 being a little gray area Sorry, I can't speak. Can you talk about, would the district be okay with that language with the student enrollment, or would it have to be more vague? What would it have to look like?
I like that there's a number, a specific. I think one of the things that we've lacked in our conversations about enrollment are specific benchmarks, where we could say that this is threat yellow, green, yellow, red, right? And so I like that it has a number. What number we would use, I'm not sure. My knee-jerk to 350 is we don't want to normalize 350 as being an okay loss of students. That's a lot of kids. It may be we'll be looking at a different number, but I do appreciate that we're moving in this, like I said, direction of putting some real specific flags on the ground that would say this number means these things. So yeah, so I will take that back and we'll look at it, and maybe we would change that, because I know in years past we thought 150 was we normalized 150. So maybe we go back to doing that, but even then, probably don't want to normalize 150 forever, because eventually it'll be zero. That could be things we look at. Maybe we even look at doing a percentage so that we have something in place that we could go back to in future years as well.
Yeah, and I just wanted to, sorry.
Go ahead, Jay.
Dana, we're good at doing that. I just wanted to clarify the reason we went with 350 was because, Dana, were we on the same page? Of course we were. Was just because of the number 500 that you guys presented. So we did the 150 that you said, Vic, off of that 500. So that's why we got 350. It wasn't just a 350. So.
Yeah. And again, as Dana talked about a spirit, this really is a spirit in this acceptance of a 2%. That the spirit is that we will not lose as many kids. I understand protecting ourselves just in the case of, but that spirit is that when I'm going to go ahead and say when we meet again sometime in October, that we will all work together to try to get our educators, closer to that 5% that we all walked out for, and complete that 20 by 20. So
And just to add that the 350 isn't to be normalized, it's only for next year budget. We'd like most of the proposals that we negotiate to be perpetual, but we know the salary one is a year by year negotiation. So we don't foresee having that number every year and that kind of language every year, the need for it. We just put that in because of the district giving the conservative numbers on projected possible things happening, that we just want to be sure that if those possible things don't happen, that we can relook at trying to get us closer to that 5 or 6% that we had hoped for.
Okay, so then just to be clear on where we stand, it sounds like maybe district might take a look at the wording and propose some slight changes in the wording, or perhaps changes in the number, maybe to a different number or to a percentage, and then we'll get that back on Monday.
Yeah, I'd say we're at the 2-yard line. It's first and goal. So we're in a really good position here, and we should get this done pretty quick.
Thank goodness. And we are going to give the ball to Marshawn Lynch, aren't we?
No, throw it again, please. Throw it again.
all right, are there any questions before we move on to Proposition 2, Dana?
No, you guys can hear me? Okay, I was frozen for a minute, just making sure. Okay, so we'll just make sure in the notes that we know that something's going to come back to on Monday regarding the language for 1, and we're really, really close, so that I think that's something to celebrate. So good work, all teams, thank you. So we're going to move on to Proposal 2, and Jay, I'm not sure if you have any visual for that.
I just had the language itself, if you want me to pull it up.
Yeah, sure, yeah, that works.
Give me 1 second, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and talk about it while you're in the process of pulling it up. So one of the things that our PECTA team does when we start looking at the budget is we look at those budget lines that could potentially be moved into M&O, and we use that to figure out how we can get to the number that we want in terms of salary. And one of the things actually that we've noticed over the past 2 years is that our district saves quite a bit of money in those non-reverting cash accounts. So that's the MIPS, the indirect costs, community schools, capital, someone might have to help me out from my team. I want to say like capital overlay or something like that. So there's a couple of different accounts that we seem to be saving a lot of, and we thought that in trying to be in line with districts, need to be financially conservative for the what ifs. We propose that for those non-reverting cash accounts, that the district, if you save 10%, that's a pretty conservative number, we thought, but currently we're saving about 15% in those non-reverting cash accounts. And so we were wanting to say, well, that's wrong, wrong thing, Jay.
Hold up the wrong graphic, I'm sorry, give me a second.
Okay, all right. So we were wanting to say, if we save over that 15%, that extra 5%, or over the 10%, that extra 5%, or however much it is, because it may be lower next year, that we would pay staff out for that. Because, in our view, unless there's information that you guys would like to give, it just seems like over the past 3, 4, 5 years, the amount of money that we've accumulated in those accounts are very high. Like an indirect cost alone, I think there's $4.6 million sitting there that's been collected over the past 4 or 5 years. And so that's what we're proposing is anything over the 10% would result in pretty much like a payment. So at this time, I would say anything you guys have questions or comments or information that maybe we don't have or know that might help us figure this one out.
As a question, I just want to make sure I'm being clear. 10% of what? 10% of the total M&O budget expenditures, or 10% of that particular account?
10% of the non-reverting cash accounts, and I know there's a lot of them. So let me maybe be more clear, and maybe this is something that we might put in the language. Let me just find what I'm looking for so I can make sure I don't miss any of the accounts that we look at, that PECTA looks at when we look at the that we moved into. So I'm sorry, give me a moment.
And while Dana's looking it up, our main purpose for this was at that 10% right there, was it showed that we were still giving the district, giving you guys the room to save a good amount of money. Sorry, Dana, I'm kind of talking over you, but it allowed for saving a good amount of money, but also allowed for the potential for educators to get paid more. So that's kind of where we came up with this. It's language that's pretty familiar in Deer Valley and in Paradise Valley as well. Those were two districts that we kind of leaned on for this one. And so, yeah, I just wanted to give you a little background as to why we were proposing this in the first place. Sorry, Dana.
Oh, it's okay. So here are the specific accounts that we look at. And again, it's not specified in the language that we submitted to you, but I think we would be willing to make it very specific because again, there are lots of other non-reverting cash accounts that the district has. So we're looking very specifically at MIPS, which, we look at what has been the ending balance in that account for the past 10 years. And according to what was submitted to the state, on average, over the past 10 years, we end with about $825,000 just in the MIPS account. Another account is the unrestricted capital outlay. And again, if we're just looking at what that looks like over the past 10 years, this one's a little bit more different. It goes up and down and up and down. And we've used more and more of this account as the years have gone on. But just last year, the ending balance in that account was over $2 million. Also looking at the Civic Center account, that's a little less money. The ending account for that last year, or balance for that account last year was $364,000, a little over that. Another is the community schools, which we don't generally keep money in. So maybe not since like about 2011. Indirect costs, which again, we know the ending balance for indirect costs at the end of last year was $4.2 million. Mm-hmm. And so just those specific accounts are the ones that we look at to try to determine where extra money could come from. And like I said, we have had quite a bit of savings in those places. And so ending, it's about 15% of our non-reverting accounts out of our total M&O budget that we save from those accounts that are as of right now. And so we're wanting that number to be lower.
So when you're saying 10%, it's 10% of that particular account, or the accumulation of all those accounts together?
The accumulation of those non-reverting cash accounts all together. And so we're looking, when we say the 15%, we're saying 15% of what the M&O expenditure is. But we're just looking at those specific accounts, not of the overall M&O budget, but we're just using the expenditure of the M&O to determine the percentage that gets saved in those non-reverting cash accounts.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
And another thing to clarify too is this money would go to, we have it listed as all employees. We're not just looking out for certified here. This is all employees would get this chunk of change.
So I'm always open to people wanting to give me more money. So, hey, come on, I've got a kid who's going to need braces. But can I ask why 10% rather than 12 or 9? Like, is that just something that your research has told you is common for school savings?
Like I said, we looked at, well, I know when we talked about like carryover for the total M&O budget, you know, that 10% number has come out, even though we know previously it had been 4% kind of like by law or by, I don't know, policy or law. And then that's been changed. So, you know, we thought that that was a safe number. We didn't think that it was something that was asking for too much. I think additionally, like Jay said before, we relied on, you know, some of our brothers and sisters in other associations that have similar language. And we thought that it was a reasonable ask based upon what those two other locals have in their language as well.
Okay, thank you. And then, and I don't know enough about this particular area. This would clearly go to our budget people and to Dr. Hildago to fine tune the whether or not it can happen and that sort of thing. I just want to put out there sort of for the greater good, because when I think about numbers, I think about them differently since I've been in a district level position over the years. And so $1 million sounds like a whole lot of money in my personal account, but how quickly I can spend $1 million with one unexpected thing that happens in a school district, suddenly what I thought was a large amount of money is no longer enough. And so I'm thinking about things like our utility costs and the times that we've had to dip in just since I've been here, how often it sounds like I'm in meetings where I'm hearing that we're having to pull this 800,000 to do this one thing or 100,000 to do this other thing. So, so that's kind of where my question was coming from as far as the, how do we decide what's a safe number, just because money goes in large chunks very quickly. And so I'm kind of that conservative with my own money. Like, I don't know, do I want to spend it all or do I want to have a little bit? And I wasn't sure where the safe spot officially lands. And again, they're experts, I'm not one, so I won't pretend to be, but that was kind of where my mindset was in asking that.
And if I'm not mistaken, team can correct me, that the state used to have a requirement that districts had to hold 7%, I think it was, and that requirement no longer exists, but that was based on what I think they felt was a safe number. And we know that our district's a little more on the conservative side, so we upped that a little to the 10%. And we did look at some sister districts that were using that number based on that as well, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that specific, like, it was 4%, and that was for the carry forward for the entire M&O budget. So two like slightly different things, but yeah, we know that districts used to carry forward far less than what they carry forward now. And I guess what I would say to, like, in response to the concerns about, you know, things come up. Yeah, I would imagine that that's a normal district thing, that things come up. And so when you look at these accounts over the course of 10 years, I imagine that things had come up during those times. And yet, and still, the district was able to save a lot of money in many of those accounts, while also paying for the things that come up. And so I guess the question is, what do we save? What, you know, if you could provide clarification about what we save that money for, then maybe we could know, well, what is reasonable and what's not.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Dana. As I'm thinking about just the interest here, and I know that in the original response administration wrote, we said we just want to hear some more about the interest here. It sounds it's sort of twofold from what I'm hearing. One, you're seeing there's a couple of districts that do this, but two, it's also revisiting during a year a budget, because we don't currently do that. We set a budget and then we talk about it like 9 months later, and we're not really sure what happened in between. I've worked in enough districts to know that at any given moment, you can find one person in the district says, we are broke and we can't afford anything. And you can go find somebody else that says, we're sitting on mountains of cash and there's money for things. And I think as principals, you probably experienced that a bit, where at the end of the year, it's like, oh snap, there's some money we got to spend because we're not gonna be able to take it next year. We were saving it. And so what's really been the catalyst for a lot of this is current year funding. Those percentages changed by the state around the same time current year funding happened, in part to make sure that districts had the financial flexibility to do that. But I think more nefariously, the state started changing those numbers to say, you don't need more money, we're not going to fund you anymore. And so change those numbers. And in the same way that they're making us go out for bonds and overrides in our local community, and normalizing that as a funding source as opposed to funding from the legislature. So all of that being said, I would be a little hesitant to want to copy directly something happening in the district because I'd want to better understand the conditions that led to that language. But the spirit of this, I appreciate very much. And I'm wondering if we could tie it back to the first proposal. Where in the first proposal, the spirit of it is to say, let's check back in and let's look to see if the doomsday happened. And if it didn't, what can we do with that money? Perhaps we can do the same thing here, where we make that special session not just about the M&O budget and lots of students, but also about the non-reverting accounts. And I wonder if we may be able to put that into place even a couple of times during the year. I think, Chico, you threw it out October. It sort of stands to reason that we would take another look at things in October, November. We could also take another look at things in January, February when we're doing our performance-based budget. And so looking at the proposal saying that there would be this payout in equal chunks, I appreciate very much it says all employees. I wonder if we could do something even better with the money, looking through a lens of equity as well. I know that we've discussed that there are some employee groups, not support staff certified, but like this particular group of employees who are experiencing tight compression, where the minimum wage has raised, nothing else is raised, and now the bosses are not making that much more than the reports. On the other hand, we have some groups that are way too far apart, where some people are making these astronomically high salaries compared to people that are down here and been working here for a while. One way to fix those problems is to give a raise to that group of people to say, we're going to spend $40,000 to fix the salaries of these people, but we're not dividing it equally. Because if we divide it equally, we're going to keep having the same problem. We're actually going to put together a committee and thoughtfully discuss the best way to use that $40,000 to address the needs of that team. This could be the type of money to do that. To get very tangible about that, again, I'm going to go back to TIF. The world after Makisa is scary in the sense that we need to find this money. We need to use this money. We need to keep things as stable as possible once the Makisa grant is pulled away. These non-reverting accounts may be a chance for us to do that as well. So in the spirit of transparency and maximizing compensation, at the same time, the spirit of understanding current year funding and understanding the need to think creatively about money, I'm wondering if we might find some kind of median here where, again, we can put those two proposals together and we can revisit this whole conversation at the same time.
Okay. So do you think that you might want to put together some language and get us back?
Yeah, I think we can do that. I'm just thinking through exactly what that's going to look like. But yeah, we'll take a stab at that. And let's see if we can meet both of these interests. Like I said, transparency, maximizing compensation, flexibility, and being very innovative in the way that we're thinking about these first money.
And it sounds like you're going to sprinkle this one with the second half of proposal one.
Yeah, I think that would make the most sense to do. I like your term of special session.
Yeah.
And I would want to say at some point, maybe it doesn't feel so special to check back in on these things, but it's maybe part of our normal process. But for the time being, a special meet and confer budgetary session that would do this update. Knowing, again, we don't know what is going to happen between now and October when it comes to COVID. We're probably going to have to meet anyway. And so all that being said, I think we can dovetail both those things together, and I'll take a stab. Administration will take a stab at making that language and giving it to you by Monday or Tuesday.
Okay. That sounds good. And I would just say one thing that I think sometimes leads to our us being two ships passing in the night sometimes is that we aren't always working from the same numbers. So I know that a lot of times the budget gets revised in October. And so, PECTA pulls all their numbers from what's submitted to the state. So if there's something different happening, of course, we have to rely on district to be able to give us the most accurate numbers, which we appreciate that happened at the beginning of our Zoom meet and confers. So I guess, we would just want to make sure that that continues to happen so that we can all be working from the same set of facts, because that just helps us be able to talk directly to each other about the same thing with minimal miscommunications. So thank you for that, district team. We really appreciate the openness about it. I'll be honest, we were a little bit nervous about this one, but I think that the response sounded a lot more positive than what we were anticipating. So thank you.
Are there any other questions before we move on? Okay. We are going to go to proposal number 11, which is Prop 301, and Julie will be covering this.
All right. I think Jay's going to put the information up there, but basically in this proposal, PECTA is asking that 301 money payouts be expanded to include all certified staff, not just the current group of staff included in that. And that we know that the language of the law in some districts that Fund 13 is one of the classroom site funds where that money can be distributed to certified staff that aren't necessarily classroom teachers. And the reason that PECTA is requesting this is because, again, despite the name PECTA that says Teachers Association, we do negotiate for all certified staff, and it's the group of non-classroom teachers. They don't receive any of those additional stipend monies that classroom teachers receive: 301 money, retention stipends, performance-based pay, opportunity culture, which is the huge draw for this district in retention and recruitment of highly qualified staff. When you talk about Phoenix L being one of the more highly paid districts in the state, I think a big piece of that are these stipends that classroom teachers get. And we have lost some non-classroom teachers to other districts because of some of the competition in these areas that other districts are able to provide. So we just want to remain competitive and just look at some of that equitable distribution as well. Next slide, Jay. And we just threw my pen there. Administration's response to the initial proposal, I was just putting it up there, but just saying the willingness to look at this proposal, exploring based on the law how that could be done and to which staff that could be done, and just the awareness that currently the way some of the other incentives are, it's not necessarily able to be paid out to all staff, like the MAKISA grant monies and those kind of things. And just noting that if the only pot of money that could be used to include everybody is the current pot of money that's used, that could minimize the payment for some of the staff currently receiving that money. So we looked at that, and some of the numbers that I know Dr. Diaz provided to us. And these numbers might be a little different with fluctuation in staff and people leaving the district, but at the time that we had asked for it, current staff receiving the 301 money is 367 staff, and at the current payout, which isn't necessarily a set number, but it's been the number the past 2 years, the $3,000, $1,101,000 was the amount that was used to cover that payout to those 367 staff members. The certified staff that are currently not eligible for the site funds are about 63. And if you base that on the $3,000, that's about $189,000 additional money if you're keeping it at that current level for everybody and not dividing up that $1,101,000 fund. So there were, and just in case people are wondering, that group currently of certified staff not eligible, based on, again, what Dr. Diaz helped us get this information, it includes this list of staff: BISs, curriculum alignment specialists, language acquisition, nurses, OTs, PTs, psychologists, social workers, SLPs, and a technology integration specialist position. So I had two questions first, and one is what groups other than classroom teachers are currently included in that 367 number? Because I know that in the past the language was adjusted, like to include ISs, for example, who are not in the classroom, and funds were allocated for that. So we're curious, first of all, what other groups have been included in that 301 payout? And then our second question is, our first ask would be, is if administration is willing to allocate monies from Fund 13, which currently is a little over $3 million in that fund, to pay out to that additional 63 staff members at the current 3,000 rate. So we wouldn't have to look at minimizing any of the payments for anyone else. So those are our first two kind of asks. I'll let Dr. Diaz process that.
Actually, let me address the first question. Can you go back to the slide before where we gave you the rundown of the FTE and who it is? Yeah, that one. So you already named one of them, and those are the IISs are also included in that group. As I'm looking at this list, I'm trying to remember some of the other ones that off the top of my head: reading interventionists, math interventionists, MCLs, EITs. Those are just the ones off the top of my head to answer the first question.
And can I ask you, where is the money pulled for that group of non-classroom staff to receive the 301 money? Which fund?
It's pulled out of Fund 13, and they're included in that. And so in terms of looking at these other employee groups, yeah, we would say let's look at legality of it first. The second thing, in terms of your second question, I would want this to be answered by the Prop 301 committee. It feels that they are in the best position to understand this at the level that we need to. Because again, to the point that we made earlier, if we add more people into the pool, it's going to impact the shares of everybody. The other reason I would say we want to put this into the Prop 301 committee is I think we need to take some time right now to let Prop 301 breathe to see what happens over the next couple of months. Prop 301 is based off of sales taxes. We know that sales taxes took a massive hit in March and April and May. If it continues to take that hit in June, July, and August, and if it takes a worse hit, if there's a second spike of COVID in September, October, November, we're going to be in a place where we may not have enough in the Prop 301 to pay out the things that we're billing to Prop 301. And so we may have to make it whole. How we make that whole, that could be the non-operating cash accounts, that could be M&O, that could be any number of other places where we can look to make things whole. The more people we add in, the more people we have to make whole. And the more stretched thin it's going to be to do a process like that. And to the point earlier, that could be much ado about nothing, right? We could be in a position in August where the economy's back at a boom level and Prop 301 monies are at a high level. We could even be in a position in September where a special session of the legislature came back and they made Prop 301 the full cent that was proposed in the last legislative cycle. So I think it's a reason to put this into the 301 committee's purview as opposed to meet and confers. 301 committee has PECTA representatives. I think if these were those PECTA representative marching orders and it's very clear that this is an interest of PECTA, that committee is going to be in the best position to answer the second question.
Well, no, it was.
Can I ask a question?
Yep. No, go ahead.
Well, I guess I just want to ask a question back about you know, if it's legal to add, you know, these other non-teaching members, I guess my thought, and I might be wrong, so tell me if I'm wrong, my thought is that the amount of money that's there doesn't matter. It's just going to be less for everyone. And which that's what it is because of the amount of money. If there's money that's less in 301 than there was this year, the people who are eligible for it are going to get less money. You know, I think the spirit of the proposal is to try to include those people who already are at a disadvantage and not getting this extra money that other positions are getting that we represent. And so wanting to try to bring them in. And, you know, while I understand that the 301 committee does a lot of work and they understand the 301 funds, you know, I don't know if we necessarily need to say the amount here. The amount is determined by the 301 committee, but who's included in that, I don't see why that couldn't be something that would be appropriate to decide here at this table.
And that was exactly, thank you, Dana, what I was going to say, that we are asking for meet and confer to make a decision, yes, to include that all certified staff, and that then the 301 committee would look at, like they do every year, how much money is there, what's the criteria for receiving it, how is that allocated, and they would just be looking at that, including the, you know, the 400 and something. If you go to the next slide, I did show kind of just if you disperse, just so people have an understanding, it would be 430 people then total that we'd be looking at instead of the 367. And we are asking Meet and Confer to just make that decision. And you can see that if it was happening this year with the available funds and you were changing the allocation to include everybody, it would be a little less than $500 less a person. And that's where, we'd be willing to take those kind of decisions from the committee back to PECTA to kind of talk about. But again, we want to advocate strongly for all certified staff. And I did highlight on the next slide just one area that just in some of the information that we received, just the letter of the law where it is legal. Districts have a choice on how they pay out the certified non-classroom staff, that as long as they do have that certification, it can be done. And we know that other districts do this and they use Fund 13 to do that. So that is our ask for you guys to say that, yes, we will include all certified staff and that we will include the additional 63 people from here on out when we talk about 301.
Well, to your question, Dana, about eligibility, the 301 committee does determine eligibility because they create the whole plan, and the plan includes eligibility language. So again, I don't know that this is the place to make this decision, because I'm not, anything we put on the 301 plan has to be approved by teachers at a vote of 70%. If what you're asking for is for administration to move in this direction, so to speak, in the 301 committee, I think we can agree to that. But I think we need to leave it up to the 301 committee to put this in the 301 plan.
So was the addition of those other positions, I'm sorry, Julie.
No, you're asking exactly what I was about to ask.
So then, was the addition of those other positions who are not in the classroom teaching, that something that was approved at 70%, or was that a decision that was made without that vote?
I'd have to look into that. I wasn't in the district at the time, but we would have to go back and look at when they were added and what was the mechanism that added them to it.
Right. It's my understanding that they have to go on the requirements for eligibility for the payout, but we're not trying to control that. Actually, we're just trying to say that we want these people to be included. And so they would still determine what, it would just be more positions that are eligible. And so they would determine what the eligibility is for all the different groups that are there, just like the addition happened previously.
Correct, because that's our question too. And in equitable decision-making, how was it decided that, IAS is reading, math, MCLs, all the other positions that it was determined to include in it, yet, there's still that group that continues to be excluded year after year.
Oh, I mean, I like I said, I totally understand. I want to just make sure we're taking the right problems to the right people and solving them in the right ways. The original proposal lists retention stipends, PBP incentives, and OC stipends. It sounds like earlier in this presentation, you've already identified that those are bound by the grant and not by state law or district or anything like that. So it sounds like what we're also talking about this proposal now is only limited to Prop 301 and not the other funding sources that were listed in the.
Yeah, to explain the proposal, this proposal is specifically asking for 301 money. It's just highlighting that one of the reasons is that group doesn't receive those other funds, and also foreshadowing that we do want to in the future advocate for more of the stipend payouts to the same group that's excluded from all these. We're aware that those stipends in the future, if we discuss those and how they happen, or if they're built into a step salary schedule, that they can't be used from AKISA money, but maybe there's other funds that could compensate in a similar way to those groups. We're not throwing that out there yet. We're just foreshadowing that will be future things that we want to advocate for. But this second bullet is just kind of that justification for the ask in the first bullet.
So not to quibble too much about language, but where it says, in order to attract and retain highly qualified certified staff members, PECTA is requesting these incentives. You're not referring to the incentives in the previous sentence. You're only referring to Prop 301.
Correct, for next year, correct.
Again, I said I think we'd be happy to take a look at it, but I do believe this has to go through Prop 301. I do believe this would have to go through a teacher vote. Excellent question about what happened with IISs when they were included, or interventionists. Again, I can go back and I can go look at that. But my understanding of the way that Prop 301 works is the eligibility is part of the plan. The plan is created by the committee. The committee has to take the plan out to a vote of 70% of teachers.
You're just basing that on the legality, the legal language.
Right, the way that the Prop 301 plan is constructed and approved. And then, of course, it's got to be approved by the governing board as well. But I think, this could be day one of the Prop 301 committee's meeting next year, as it goes and it redrafts the eligibility language.
Yeah, I'm not sure where to go from here, because I think we're just seeing a different, like Dana said, we were thinking, yes, that committee determines eligibility of the payouts and the money and the allocations. But we thought that it was a meet and confer decision for who would be included in that group.
I'd be happy to look into that and have a response Monday. If we are seeing it differently, the good news is that we are looking at the same thing as an end product, whether that happens through meet and confer, whether it happens through the Prop 301 committee. If it happens through the Prop 301 committee, it's certainly more democratic. It has to go to the vote of everybody who's going to be impacted by that loss of $450, I think is what you have there. Going back to our special session, I think this also dovetails with that. When I hear your plight, Ms. Robbins, I don't know that stipends that you're after. You're probably after more base salary. And I think if you talk to many teachers and they're looking at stipends that may have expiration dates, it would feel a lot better if that compensation was in the form of base salary.
Well, not in regards to 301.
Well, that could be something though that we look at in terms of looking at a special session. Is there something we have to do with the base salaries for those groups? Because I would imagine, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, there was a distinct difference between the base salary of a psychologist, a social worker, or a specialist at the district office versus that of a teacher. And perhaps we need to go back and look at those base salaries and get those base salaries to be more competitive.
I agree that needs to be looked at. I see that as a separate issue than 301 money. I still believe 301 money should be paid out to all certified staff, and I know many districts do that across the board. So I do see those as two separate issues, but absolutely, I think that we do need to look at base salaries for that group of non-classroom teachers as a separate issue that I know we've been kind of looking at through other avenues over the years. And if there's any way to sit down and look at that equitable distribution, I do believe that's needed. I think it's a separate issue from 301.
Can I ask another question in regards to, and I might be wrong, so Vic, correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't the teacher vote only apply to one of the three funds that are in the classroom fund? So if, for instance, you pay out of Fund 13, and I might be mixing them up, but you just follow me for a minute. If you pay out of Fund 13, and maybe 12 is the fund that requires that 70% of the teacher vote, then is that true that only one of those three funds requires the teacher vote, or all three do, payouts from all three?
That's what I have to look into, is looking at each of these three funds, what is the mechanism to trigger changes to the disbursement of those funds? And if we find that it has to be part of the 301 plan, that's why we'd want to take this into account.
Oh, so then is the first step to just see what you can find or see what you can see, and, where the money might come from for the payouts. Money doesn't have to come from the fund that requires the teacher vote, then this might all just kind of be a moot point, and we might be able to make it work without that. And if it does, then maybe we might have no other choice legally than to go with the option of saying, the teachers have to vote on the eligibility plan, which would include the extension of other certified staff members in that group. So maybe the first step is to get that information back.
Exactly.
And then we come back to the table and we talk about it.
Exactly.
if we do determine that it doesn't have to go to the 301 committee for a vote, is it something administration would be willing to do then?
I don't want to answer that without having the answer to the first question, because I'm not sure that the answer to the second question would matter based on what we're going to learn first. What I can tell you right now, I'll say again, you know, we're going to look into it. We'd be happy to look into this. We're going to make sure it goes through the right mechanism. We're going to make sure it goes through the right process. We're committed to the spirit of this. I think that, again, we're aligned here on interest, which is wonderful. We're going to need to look at it closer, though, in terms of making sure that we're putting the right things into the committees. And to your point, you know, it's a good sign that I'm already talking to you about something that you want to talk about further down the road, which is raise a base salary. So I think we're at a good point here, and we can look at this at 3:30. Look at this as an update for 3:30 in terms of what we can do with it, and we'll make sure we follow the right protocol.
And I think that if we do move towards the step salary schedule, if that's all agreed upon, that's a place that a lot of this base salary discrepancy and gaps can be addressed through getting a step salary schedule for the district for all groups.
Are there any more comments, questions, observations?
Is that information something we can have back by Monday, so we know if we need to discuss this next Thursday or not on the agenda? Like the information about if it needs to go through the 301 committee or not, will we have that by Monday?
That's exactly what I've said that we're going to have at 3:30.
Any questions, comments? Okay. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is proposal number 9.
Chico, are you pulling that up? Oh, never mind. You are pulling it up.
Yes, sir. All right.
Wow.
What's that? Oh, you want me to put my hat back on? You got it, Jay.
Yeah.
All right. So proposal number 9, a professional agreement. So first, in case if you're asking, what's a professional agreement? Well, it's an official document between educators and the governing board that outlines educators' rights and responsibilities. What's in it? Language regarding class size, work hours, prep time, many other things. Things that educators need a one-stop shop to go, what are my rights? And maybe not bombard Dr. Diaz with 1,000 questions. We could be right there waiting to help them out. So why do we want to have it? Always back to the students. We want to ensure student success through respecting educators and their voice in the district. As we very much well know, educators are, for whatever reason, and especially in the state, are often not viewed as professionals. I think our district can take a huge step by going forward with a professional agreement and truly respecting our voices in this district. So the ask. PECTA's request to adopt and ratify a professional agreement between PECTA and Phoenix Elementary School District Number 1. That was our ask. District responded, the proposal includes a request to the governing board that is not appropriate for administration to consider. The proposal is outside the scope of meet and confer. So to that, I have some questions. Number 1, why is a professional agreement outside the scope of meet and confer when all proposals need to be agreed to by meet and confer and approved by the governing board?
I can respond to that. Can you go up 2 slides? So the proposal that we responded to says the governing board will agree to PECTA's request to adopt and ratify a professional agreement. That seems to be missing from your slide. So the proposal that you posted, or sorry, response that you posted is in response to something different than you have on the slide and refers to what was sent to us as the actual proposal. Again, it reads the governing board will agree to PECTA's request to adopt and ratify a professional agreement. So has this proposal changed? And if it has, I would say it's probably not a good use of time for us to look at the district response to a different proposal.
This was I was working off the language that we had on what we sent you guys and the response back from you. I was copied it verbatim.
So does the one you have say the governing board will agree to PECTA's request to adopt, or does anybody else's have this? And can you clarify that?
All right, so what's the clarifying question you're looking for, Dr. Diaz?
What's the actual proposal? So I know I have a camera here. This is the meet and confer proposals that were emailed to us. I'm looking at proposal 9, and it says the governing board will agree to PECTA's request to adopt and ratify a professional agreement between PECTA and Phoenix Elementary School District number 1. Whereas what you have on this slide says PECTA's request to adopt maybe it's PECTA's request is to adopt adopt and ratify a professional agreement. But what you have on this slide and what I have in the proposals is different. And so what the district responded is based on what's on this document, not what's on the slide.
Okay.
So which is the actual proposal? If it's what you have on the slide right now, I would say let's not even talk about the district response, because the district responded to something different than what you have on the slide.
Correct. So I'm seeing here that we edited the language, but between that and this, let's go ahead and say that the language is moving forward and having both us and admin go and say to the board that, yes, we both agree that our school should have a professional agreement. Can we work with that language and then change it?
Yeah, so Monday by 3:30, I think we'd want to get that back, but I think we can still discuss just the concept and the spirit behind what you're looking for in a professional agreement.
Can I clarify, and I'll play the newbie card again that I play every now and then. Is the process of meet and confer, like we discuss and meet and confer, and whatever we concur then still has to go to the board for final approval anyway? So wouldn't we be doing that anyway through this proposal, and then we come to whatever we agree and then it does go to the board for final approval? Or is it just semantics that it says the board, because it does have to go to the board anyway after we agree?
Mm-hmm. And of course we can change the language. Thank you so much, Ms. Robbins. So working towards the language that we're both talking about here, Dr. Diaz, is this something that you view as outside of what meet and confer does?
What you have on your screen? No. What's on the sheet of paper? Yes, because that's your question, Julie. This sheet of paper is saying what you're telling the governing board to do.
Okay, so let's go.
We're not talking with them right now. So when I think about the professional agreement, I appreciate the explanation of what it is. I know this has been a topic of a lot of discussion, and I think it's something we're eager to get done. And so as we think about a professional agreement, I think I want to work off of what we may currently have in place. I know that we currently have in place meet and confer agreements. I also know we already have in place handbooks at schools, but we do not have a district level handbook. I believe that each school does. I'm wondering if the principals can speak to that for a moment. When we talk about this binder or this document that says these are the rights and the responsibilities. Principals, do you have something like that you use on your campuses right now?
Yes, so we have a binder that's given to all staff members, and we work off of the policies from district. So we take the district and we make it a little more teacher friendly, and we have the what to do's.
Right, so I understand what a handbook is. What we're asking for, and again, is a professional agreement, and this is an agreement that is put together by educators and admin. We work together to create this. This would be an equitable handbook, professional agreement that goes across the district. So you wouldn't have individual handbooks with different expectations. This would be across the board. This would be, once again, I'll use it again, that one-stop shop.
Oh, Chico, I totally understand. What I want to do though is think about what already exists that we can move off of.
Can I say too, so I get what you're saying, Vic, and I think that obviously it probably would include the responsibilities, like the district, even though I think there's some revision that can take place in terms of the responsibilities. The responsibilities for certified employees, or all employees rather, are laid out in those handbooks. What's missing that would make it a professional agreement is the rights part. You know, and the rights, a lot of the rights are in policy as well. So it's just a matter of melding the two so that the professional agreement includes not only what our responsibilities are as employees of the district, but it also includes what our rights are in terms of employees.
Right, because when I think of myself as a professional, I think of, like you said, Dr. Diaz, these handbook type, you know, responsibilities and et cetera. But I also think about my rights as an educator, as anyone does in their profession. So that's why we feel like the word handbook, I understand the word handbook, but it's more than that. And so I think you're agreeing with us too, where you're taking that handbook and then adding this right part to it. So it's building on it, putting it together, boom, professional agreement.
That would also have to be ratified and agreed to, right? I mean, we wouldn't make it and call it one. You have to do the agreement part of the professional agreement. The creation of school handbooks as they currently exist for principals, are there committees at your schools that do that? Is there already, you know, teacher voice or teacher participation in the development of those? Because I know that there is in the student handbooks, but I'm not sure if there has been in the school handbooks.
You know, I haven't updated the Kenilworth version of it in some time. It was something we worked on about 5 years ago now when I had the opportunity to join Kenilworth, and a committee was formed at that time, and we put it together at that time. But since then, it's a document that is there.
The professional agreement would also be a home for our meet and confer agreements. Like, for example, this year I probably had like 100 questions about class size, because that was one thing we agreed on last year. And everybody knew that there was a magic number, but it had sort of gotten to, you know, this mystical, you know, rumor that people heard. And so everybody didn't know, well, what's the number? When do I ask for help? When do I talk to admin? And so if we had all of a professional agreement with all of our meet and confer agreements within there, it would be an easy place for everybody to access that type of information. Or for example, we had an educator this year who had an issue with their McKESA money, and they didn't know where to look. Do you go to policy? Do you ask your principal? Do you ask HR? And so this would be a document that would hold all of those type of things.
Yeah, and something also, I mean, is that, well, I again can only speak for Kurt School, is each teacher's situation is unique. So my expectation would be that he or she would just come to me first to dialogue about his or her concerns. And then from there, we navigate through what is the next appropriate step.
So taking what you just said, to me, that would be like saying, going to a police officer and asking if this is against the law or not, where you can just know what the law is in a nice area that decides what your rights are right there.
I think too, just piggyback on what Principal Magana is saying, I think the professional agreement would outline that as a step, right? Like talking to your principal, it would outline what your steps are if you have a concern, and that could very well be, depending on the agreement, the first step in that process. Correct? I think, because I've had districts where that was outlined as the step to first talk to your building administrator, then
So, so the ask is, why not come to an agreement? This benefits the district, educators, and most of all our students. And let's let the board decide if this is appropriate for administration to consider and outside the scope of meet and confer.
Again, Chico, I apologize, but what you have on this screen is referring to a document that you all changed. And so, and again, I'm sorry if I'm not being clear. There is mutual interest in doing this. What I'd like to use our time to do is to make a path to constructing it based on what already exists. And for us to clarify what are some things that we could build off of. Because if we just chain together meet and confer agreements, we're going to miss things. We haven't, in the past 2 meet and confers, well, I guess last year we sort of did, we clarified policy about retribution, but we haven't spent as much time talking about rights and responsibilities in meet and confer as much as work conditions. And what you're asking for in a professional agreement refers to rights and responsibilities. So I'm trying to locate where are the other places that we currently have those collected. What can we build off of? What can we work from? And I think what we need to do in this agreement is to probably assemble a task force or a committee, some other body, unless we want to stay in meet and confer for a few more weeks to write this thing and to carve it out. In terms of the rights and the responsibilities, I think the handbooks give us a starting place. I totally understand what's missing from them. I think policy gives us a starting place, but I understand what's also missing from policy. And so where else can we start to develop this? What are the other sources where we can work from?
But I think, aren't we asking to develop a professional agreement based, that's what it does. It pulls all those sources that you just referred to, policy and handbook, that we're just saying that, yes, we'll have a professional agreement, not what it is. And then we'd have to work to create that professional agreement by pulling from all of those sources that you just referenced, is my understanding.
So I think, Julie, that you and I are on the same page with trying to kind of clarify what exactly are we agreeing to move forward with even for the future conversations. So one, are we looking to agree that yes, collectively we support the idea of a professional agreement, but we're not agreeing to any specific agreement yet? And then the next step of that is, if both sides think that there should be a professional agreement, then we're willing to work to craft one to submit for board approval, but that the actual professional agreement in and of itself is something that the board would have to approve as its own document. So we would essentially just be agreeing that, yes, we're interested in pursuing, seeing what it could look like as sort of a united front. We're not agreeing to actually any specific professional agreement, or that we'll submit anything as part of meet and confer as a professional agreement.
And
Dr. Brown said it eloquently. Thank you.
Dr. Brown, going off of what you said, a lot of us have already done that. We have a Google Drive where we've started putting together what a professional agreement would look like specifically for our district. So I know that on our end, like, so Vic had mentioned, where would we pull all this information from? Where would we get all this information? So yeah, the majority of it would come from policy, would come from previous, et cetera, et cetera. But we also have a bank that we've started to put together where we feel like that would be a good starting place potentially. So we would go into that meeting being like, all right, hey, this is what we have so far, and see where we go from there.
But officially right now, we're not trying to weed any of that out. We are literally just trying to decide, do we agree that collectively we would like to ask the board if it's okay if we try and draft one for their later approval? Like, we're not trying to write the professional agreement. We're just agreeing that we would like to ask the board if it's okay to write one. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question? And
sorry, I froze, but yeah.
Is there a reason why? I mean, I'm just thinking about, like, to me, when I think of professional agreement, I look at Phoenix Union. Their professional agreement is huge. It's long, and clearly that professional agreement was not drafted in one school year. It's the result of many meet and confers over the span of time. Is there a reason why we couldn't use our meet and confer document as our very first professional agreement with the understanding that we're going into next year to then make it more robust. And then every year after that, we revise it, either adding, modifying, or taking out, depending on our circumstances, what's already in there. Is there a reason why we couldn't start with our meet and confer agreement being the professional agreement?
I have the same question. I just happen to have me right now. This is my magic blue binder. I carry it around everywhere. We make one for each HR staff member. And in my magic blue binder, I do have a copy of the meet and confer agreements that we have with ESPA and PECTA. Because we cite it. To your point, Nicole, in terms of getting questions about class size, yeah, we get them all the time, and we're happy to answer them. When I think about using the meet and confer agreement as a professional agreement, is there something about the meet and confer agreement now that lacks what you're looking for in a professional agreement?
Yeah, I think the language of a professional agreement and the legalities of a professional agreement is a step above the meet and confer process. It has more teeth. It's more concrete. Like even this year, I know we've talked about like class size proposal, for example, things that were agreed upon last year, but now we're like, oh wait, are they not this year? Is meet and confer agreements stand every year, or are we renegotiating them every year? Whereas a professional agreement takes away that ambiguity, and it is a standing document to refer back to, unless it's amended, as it's amended and as it's developed over the years.
Well, but the professional agreement has to go through meet and confer anyway. It's required to. So then if we're talking about that, what we're really saying is that over the course of the school year until we get to next year's meet and confer, something will come together for us to then ratify as a professional agreement. Again, like I said, I just don't understand why that can't start right now. Why can't our meet and confer agreement be the professional agreement, knowing that next year is probably going to get a huge kick in the pants because we will have worked on it for an entire year. So it's going to look a lot more robust next year, and we will include more of the responsibilities. Right now, obviously, the meet and confer agreement looks like a lot of our rights because that's what it's typically been. But to me, it just doesn't make sense why there would be a separate process, I guess,
right,
happening.
Right. So, and just to confirm, Dana, you're saying taking this meet and confer and taking last year's meet and confer document as well. We have those two documents where the majority of us have been a part of, and where PECTA's negotiated for that. And like Dana said, yeah, it's rights for the most part right now. But if we get this set in stone, then we know going into next year, like, okay, like here's what we really need to push on. And Vic, like you've said in the past, this could even open up the idea of bringing meet confer back earlier so we can work on all this stuff to ensure that that professional agreement looks how we want it to look. So just thinking out loud, sorry.
Yes, and we did go through at our very first meeting, our first meet and confer session this year, we did go through the previous agreement, and we decided, oh yeah, we're still in agreement, we're still in agreement, we're still in agreement. And there were a couple of little things that we wanted to change, and we did, and we went through this meet and confer process to get to that point. So I think it's totally appropriate to use last year's and this year's meet and confer document as the start of our professional agreement, knowing
just
that it's
thinking out loud, sorry.
No, yeah. You're good.
No. That was my YouTube playing. I guess there's a YouTube error and it stopped playing for some people. So I'm checking to see what's going on. My bad.
Oh gosh, Jay. Okay. But yeah, I just don't want us to get away from thinking that it has to be this perfect document in order for it to be a professional agreement. It will revise itself over time. That's what happens in a professional agreement. Every single year, we agree on something more or new or different, depending on what our needs are. But I don't feel like it needs to be perfect before we decide that we want what we've agreed upon so far to be the professional agreement.
So I wonder what would be, if this would be most helpful then at this point, because I'm right there with you, Dana, right there with you, Jay. It's different than what is in the proposal I have on paper, and that's different from what's on the proposal that's also on the screen. I wonder if Monday by 3:30 this could be reproposed. so that we understand. And then in terms of your question of why can't we, I also understand why haven't we? Just to make sure that we're like really like what I remember sitting in a governing board meeting when the discussion of professional agreement came up, and I remember that my question was, what's unprofessional about the agreement we already have, and what's disagreeable about the meet and confer agreement, and is it just semantics? Is this just the label of something? And if it is just that, then yeah, let's do that. But let's also make sure that we understand why it's not. I'll do that on my end in terms of like diving in from administration years past. For all we know right now, this used to be called a professional agreement and somebody retitled it. And so I'll do that. And I'm not sure if that's something you can do on your end with AEA or NEA in terms of diving into why isn't this currently viewed as a professional agreement? Because going back to the Phoenix Union, what makes that thing so amazing is it's 50 years old and it's got 50 years of layer on top of it. We're at year 1 and 2. And so I appreciate that we're there, and I think we're going to get to that 50. None of us will probably be here for it. But at the same time, we're putting things in the right path. And so let's find out why it's not currently. And then if at Monday at 3:30, you could re-propose that to us, we'll be in a much better place to knock this one through.
Okay, I think we can do that. And I mean, to answer your question a little bit about maybe why it hasn't happened already is, one of the next things that we're going to talk about is PECTA being that sole group that represents certified staff. If you don't have one group that represents the certified staff, you have one agreement, and then 10 years from now, you have a different agreement with another group of certified staff members. And then 20 years from then, you have a different agreement. So I think that might be one of the reasons why we don't have it, or whether we haven't taken it there yet. And so I think those two proposals kind of are in step with each other.
And that is, it's a document that can be referenced when we are not teaching in the district, or we're all retired and there's a new group of people in there. Then these are things that they can use to follow on and carry on our agreements that we've made, different than the handbook. The handbook I'm thinking of is like our dress code. Well, if the district wants to change dress code for teachers, change dress code. But these are agreements that we made together, PECTA and our district, and have been approved by the board. And so that's what makes it different than a handbook, or different than things that we find in the handbook.
Okay, with that being said, we are going to segue into proposal 10, sole bargaining agent. So the ask in board policy, the Phoenix Elementary School District #1 will recognize PECTA as a sole bargaining agent for certified non-administrative employees. The first read on policy HA took place with the governing board on February 13th. This proposal is outside the scope of meet and confer. So why is this proposal outside the scope of meet and confer is our question. So just speaking for PECTA, one of the things that were said, well, what if another union or comes in and gets a greater number? And one of the things that we can do about that is we can always renegotiate then. But what's reality in fact is right now, PECTA is, whether we're official or unofficial, we are the ones that are negotiating for educators of the Phoenix Elementary School District.
And so, Vic, just to clarify, can you explain the differences between, sorry, I'm kind of putting you on the spot, my bad, but the differences between what Chico just said, what our proposal was, and the actual policy that Tom brought to the board? Is there a lot of difference, or is it basically the same thing?
Sorry, I've got like a lot of windows open at once right now. I think it's the same thing. And then the administration's response to this is outside the scope of meet and confer is the idea that we're already doing this through the governing board. And the policy will be approved through the governing board. And that's what would make it outside the scope of meeting confer. So
When will there be a second reading? Sorry.
good question. I'm not sure. I know that most policy readings were put on hold, but I know that there were policy readings that happened in today's governing board meeting. I could definitely check in with Tom Lynn. I think he would be eager to know, as the head of our policy action team, if the first reading is agreeable to PECA.
Okay. With that in scope of time, it is 4:23, so we are going a little quick. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up to our last one, which is proposal number 4, class and caseload size, and we will shift it over to the wonderful Nicole Goodwin.
So I just wanted to, since we're running out of time, quickly say thank you to all of the different departments. So I wasn't on the performance-based budgeting committee, but I was at the board meetings when all the department heads came and proposed their cuts to their departments. And each time everyone went up, they would say stuff like, we're doing this for the students, or we're doing this for the teachers. And so I just wanted to say thank you to those departments for considering all of us, and for especially considering our students first. And since last year we had agreed that on class size in the meet confer process, and we gave the district leniency with the budget by saying that we would hold to those numbers if it was within the district's budget capacity. Then we respectfully do not accept the district's counter proposal. And we would also like to know if you looked at the numbers that we proposed for the other groups, like our social workers, psychologists, and SLPs, and came to a decision on an acceptance of those caseload sizes.
Thanks, I appreciate it. In terms of a decision on the caseload sizes, we would not agree to creating caseload sizes in our meet and confer agreement. Many of those caseloads are based on schools, and we would be, I'm afraid we'd be over-promising and under-delivering for educators, and that just doesn't put them in a good place. So at this time, we're not able to make those. I am very happy to say that our social work lead, our psychologist leads, they work very hard to keep those caseloads very manageable. But given our current construction, I don't think we'd find agreement there. In terms of the district's, or excuse me, administration's counter proposal to the district caseload sizes, class sizes, I understand. Again, I'm looking to see if we can firm up things like budget capacity to put some real numbers and markers in place. If we're not at a point where we can do that with class size this year, it could be something we can revisit.
So just to confirm, Dr. Diaz, you're saying that for now, the language that's in the meet and confer language from the previous agreement is still going to be okay for this coming year?
Yes, I believe so. I'll review it one more time. We'll walk over like this whole document we're creating, of course.
Sure.
But I'll go over that one more time. But yes, that sounds agreeable. And we can keep it with at budgetary capacity as opposed to those bullets that have been created.
Okay, awesome. Good.
Can I ask a question? So for those numbers for the for like social workers and school psychs, my understanding that we're like well below those. Did the lead social worker and lead school psych have an opportunity to see the numbers, and were they considered, like, did they have a strong opinion about it? The people who lead and who decide the caseloads?
If I remember correctly, I had this discussion before COVID-19 became the dominant thing in my life. And so I apologize, I don't quite remember. But if you'd like me to do due diligence, I'd be happy to speak with the coordinators for both those departments to look at those numbers one more time.
If you don't mind, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, observations? Are there any other questions? Go ahead.
So can we know by Monday then at 3:30? Is that our time we've been agreeing on? To hear from our social workers and psychologists about their numbers?
I'm sorry, you want me to tell, you said the social worker psychologist, do you mean the coordinators of psychology, the coordinators of social worker? Okay. Yeah, I will get a response and I'll have something sent at 3:30. Yeah, that's no problem.
Yeah, and can we, I think we're done discussing all of our topics, so can we discuss what's due on Monday? Because we always forget, and I don't want to forget. And I just want to make sure that we're all being good people. So, Vic, what do we owe you by next Monday afternoon? I believe it's just the rewording of proposal number 9.
Well, maybe let's go through all the proposals
Sure,
that
yeah,
we went through today, and then we can distribute these things out.
Yeah.
So in terms of the salary increase, proposal number 1, administration will have a response to the language about a special session if there's less than 350 students by Monday at 3:30. In terms of the budget allocation, administration by Monday at 3:30 will have new language that merges number 1 and number 2 in terms of looking at a special session as a chance to look at the money in the non-reverting accounts. Monday at 3:30, proposal 11, administration will also have an update on what we can do with the funds that are being requested, specifically Fund 13 for Prop 301. And then we will have our best answer to, can it go through meet and confer? Does it have to go through the Prop 301 committee? For proposal 9, yes, PECT is rewriting that proposal, and that's due Monday at 3:30. For proposal 10, Monday at 3:30, administration will state its intention of when to bring the policy to a second reading. But we would also like PECTA to ensure that you agree to the first reading. And the first reading is acceptable to you, is probably how I should say that. And then proposal 4 for class size, a response from our coordinators Monday at 3:30 from the administrators.
That all sounds good to me.
Yeah, sounds good.
Great.
All right, at 4:31, it is adjourned. Thanks. Hey, Jay, can we have a quick breakout session and talk about